Lazy Dreamer ASMR. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my ASMR channel. Tonight we're going to be kind of rambling and reviewing Severance Season 2. I'll be talking about my favorite episodes, giving my overall thoughts, and trying out some questions that still need to be answered, and questions that we hopefully will have answers to in Season 3. It was hard to pick up just like a few episodes to talk about. I could talk about all 10 episodes, but this video would literally be like 2 hours long, so we're going to start with episode 4, which is Woe's Hollow. And this episode kind of changed the direction of the entire series. This is the Ordbow retreat, and it opens with Irving waking up in the middle of a frozen lake surrounded by the woods, which we soon learn are the Dieter Egan National Woods or National Forest or Park. I forget which one it is. And soon everybody starts to join him. Notably here, Helly R was the only person that woke up not on top of the ice and was already in the woods. Basically, a television appears out of nowhere and it's not plugged in, and I think that's pretty sus. And Milchek briefs the group that they're on an adventure and they have to seek out Woe's Hollow, and so they set out with the help of these weird hologram innies who point them in the right direction. And eventually they meet Milchek and Miss Wong at this camp that they set up, and Milchek reads the story of Woe's Hollow from Kier's point of view, which oddly enough sounds like something written by Rickon, maybe. Lots of important things happen after this. Mark and Helly make love. Bow chicka wow wow. And then Irving basically figured out that Helly is actually Helena, because Helly was never cruel. When I tell you I screamed at this part, oh my gosh. And then we also had Milchek break the Glasgow block, and Innie Irving is effectively executed. So the answers, or the questions we have left to answer here are, where were they really? What the hell were those hologram people? Who wrote the Woe's Hollow story? Was it actually Rickon? What was the deal with that dead seal in the woods? And what is the Glasgow block actually? Like, I want a legit definition. But I guess the biggest question here is, where are they actually? And I believe that they are still inside of Lumen, because the episode with Gemma proves that they have the capacity to shape the environment that they experience. For example, like Gemma, in one of the rooms she enters, she is in a crashing plane or something like that. So it would also make sense because Irving doesn't get hypothermia when he's like, oh well, I should have gotten hypothermia. Also, the TV wasn't plugged in, and if we look at Petey's map that he drew in season 1, there's a room called team building, I believe. So the easiest explanation for me is that they're not actually outside. But yeah. Anyways, so we need to talk about Gemma's episode next, which is the Shakai Bardo episode. In this episode, we finally get to learn about her and Mark, and kind of how Gemma became wrapped up in the Lumen Company. We also finally see what the hell the testing floor is, and the different things that she's subjected to. We also learn that she is fully sentient, and she remembers Mark and her life outside of the building, which is absolutely heartbreaking. other subjects like Gemma? Have Haley, Irving, and Dylan been refining Gemma's tempers or other people's tempers like other subjects, or are they just there to make it seem like, you know, they're doing work, but it's actually Mark that's been doing all the important work? Also, why did they choose Gemma out of everyone? What made her so special, if there aren't any other subjects, that is? And I still don't completely understand the point of these cards that optics and design created, so there's still lots to be addressed here. I'd also like to talk about Miss Cobelvig's episode in Assault's Neck, Sweet Vitriol, it's called. This was a pretty polarizing episode in my opinion. A lot of people hated it because in some ways it didn't advance the major plot of the season, but a lot of people really liked it because it brought a lot of, let's say, like much needed context to the current plot. Let me know what camp you're in. But in this episode, Cobell travels back to her hometown of Salt's Neck, where the Eakins' original ether factory was once located. But the town has since become dilapidated, I guess is the right word, after Lumen abandoned the town. And we learned that the ether mill employed children, and Lumen continues this tradition today, and that Cobell was a victim of child labor. We also learned that Cobell is the one responsible for creating the Severance ship, despite the company taking credit for it, and that she was part of the Wintertide Fellowship, so she had to leave her family behind to complete her fellowship. As we see what happens with Miss Huang, I think in the next episode after Sweet Vitriol, or was it before? But we can basically surmise that Cobell was probably forced to leave her house and family behind, and might not have seen them for a very long time, which is probably why the death of her mother stung so much. There's a lot of important parts at play here that give us more of an idea as to who Harmony Cobell is and why she's suddenly willing to work with Devin and Mark in future episodes. And I think this episode also allows us to understand just how deep the worship for Kier is, and how it's extremely religious and cult-like. There's a shrine to Kier in Cobell's bedroom. There's branded merchandise, worship materials. If you didn't understand the significance of it, or just how meaningful it is to Lumen employees to worship Kier, I think this episode illustrates that for us, that it's a lifestyle for them. And lastly, we need to talk about the season finale. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I must have said, what the fuck, at least 15 times. I mean, we all just watched it, so I'm not going to give a recap. Maybe I'll give like a Spark Notes recap. But this episode gave us a one-on-one conversation between Addie Mark and Andy Mark. It gave us a stand-up routine between Milchick and Robot Kier with like a laser light show. Also, Mark finally completed Cold Harbor, which was incredible. It also gives us choreography in Merriment. You know, Milchick is suddenly leading this massive marching band. He's dancing, I'm dancing. Then suddenly Jamie Egan is in a small room in front of a computer that ends up being linked to a camera that monitors the room that Gemma is being pushed into. And then Gemma's in there taking apart a baby crib. Then we got Dylan and Helly helping Mark revolt and keep Milchick in the bathroom while the marching band is still playing. And then suddenly Brienne of Tarth shows up to sacrifice a goat. And now her and Mark are fighting Drummond. And Emil the goat is finally saved is not going to die, but like, are Mark and Dylan gonna die? Like, low-key, they might. Also, do they still need MDR? Will they kidnap more people's wives and husbands so that they can make them into blank slates and then hire those people to refine their tempers? Also, what happens to Gemma? You know, most people think that she's going to link up with Devin and Cobell outside, and they're going to explain everything to her. However, a lot of people are very suspicious of Devin and Rickon, more so Rickon, and their possible connections to Lumen, you know, as seen with all the goat imagery inside their house. Seriously, if you haven't noticed this, look it up, it's insane. More questions, just rapid fire. Will any Mark refuse to leave until he is permanently severed? Because if he leaves the building, Outie Mark will take over and probably won't return to Lumen, you know what I mean? What are the implications of Mark killing Drummond, and what will happen with Greener's death? That was literally never talked about. Will Irving return? And to this end, who is Bert really? What was his entire purpose at Lumen? And who was Bert really? You know what I mean? Like, who is Irving? I don't know. Who is anybody? How long has he actually been working for Lumen? Who was he talking to on the phones? Like, there is so much left there to explore. And then I think another big question is, will Milchick join the revolt? You know, it becomes increasingly clear throughout this season how disrespectful Lumen is to its black employees, and you can see him like breaking a little bit throughout this season, and very obvious that next season something is going to happen. He is going to break, and I don't know if that's going to be him going insane and like murdering people. Probably not, or is it going to be like him joining the revolt, or I don't know, you know what I mean? There's so much here. Whatever the case is, I truly hope that we don't have to wait another 3 years for season 3, because season 2 was a masterpiece, and I really can't wait to see how the stories of these characters progress and all the secrets that will be uncovered. I truly can't wait for season 3.